Good morning, everyone. It is good to be with you today. I'm Kristen Hammett, Director of Ministry Services here at the Signatory, and I am so glad you have joined us. I know that there'll be several joining still this morning, but I just want to take an opportunity to welcome you. I am super excited to learn alongside you today as we talk about really developing an effective recurring donor program. Our experts today call it growing a sustainer program in a subscription economy. So before we jump into our topic, I want to share just a few details with you. First of all, as you know, our goal at the Signatory is to equip you in your development efforts and partner with you in major donor conversations. As you develop your donor relationships, you can view us as a resource for tools, community, and partnership. We are officially in fourth quarter. Dave and I were just talking a few moments ago about the weather certainly feels like fourth quarter in our respective areas. Here in Kansas City, we are expecting some slick roads later today. So can't believe it's October and we're already in the middle of a winter weather advisory. But along with that, we certainly know this is the most critical time to do fundraising and development, meet those objectives and those goals. So certainly here to partner alongside you in all of those major donor conversations. We provide some great tools for individuals and families to really give more generously and oftentimes pay less tax than they even thought possible. So that can mean, of course, more significant gifts to your ministry. So if you think there's an opportunity with a particular donor that you have, certainly send me an email, give me a call, and we can talk through what might be an effective strategy with them. Now, just a few reminders before we jump into today's topic. First, always engage with us on our Signatory Ministry Services Facebook page. Connect with me on LinkedIn, and then finally pass this webinar on to others. You know, we have really the privilege and opportunity to bring to you lots of great information from subject matter experts, and we really encourage you to hold that open-handed and share it with other organizations, other ministry and nonprofit leaders that you know that could benefit from that. So as we jump into today's topic, remember that it is always my goal here that this is less a presentation and more a conversation. So take a look at your toolbar at the bottom of your screen, click on that Q&A tab, and certainly send your questions my direction. I will help to facilitate those with Dave and Ellen as we jump into today's topic. All right, so here we go. Growing sustainer programs in a subscription economy. Here we are in 2019, a world of smartphones, smartwatches, social media, Netflix, Audible, Amazon, Stitch Fix, Trunk Club. I mean, the list goes on. I was watching the news last night and saw that Amazon has announced that Whole Foods has now said they can, through an Amazon Prime membership, deliver groceries within 2 hours. This is a different landscape than one that we have recently known, and I know it will continue to change. So here's what that means for you. I think really it's a challenge as a nonprofit leader to take note and identify those changes that are happening culturally, those shifts, and determine how do we implement or sort of utilize some of those tools in our own fundraising endeavors. So today's webinar hopefully will help you exactly really kind of understand that and implement some of those concepts. So we have the privilege of learning from two experts, not just one, but two experts today, Dave Raley and Ellen Thornburg from Masterworks. Dave is the Executive Vice President at Masterworks. He leads one of the strongest teams in analytics, media, and strategy in the industry. He regularly speaks at conferences and consults with national and local nonprofits. And then Alan is the Vice President of Strategic Innovation. And he helps clients build new strategies, engage supporters to give time, talent, and treasure. I am so excited to learn alongside you, our ministry leaders, as we invite Dave and Alan into today's conversation. So Dave, Alan, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Kristen. And I will say we're huge fans of the Signatory and Bill High and the work that he's done. In fact, there have been two different, just in the different circumstances of life and business that I find myself in, there have been two different people that were perfect candidates for the work that you all are doing. And I was just grateful to know about you at the times that I was introduced to these folks. And so we just love helping. Really, Masterworks at the end of the day is about inspiring generosity. We happen to do that through mass marketing, fundraising, innovation, and those sorts of things. But anything that inspires generosity and to things that delight the heart of God, we are absolutely passionate about. So this when we started talking about doing this webinar together, it was an easy decision because anything we can do to inspire ministries, we are happy to do. So today we're going to talk about sustainer programs. We're going to talk about a new breed of sustainer programs. And this, I hope for your organization, should end. There's going to be some information here. There may be some, it may feel like a lot, but I want you to know that to me, this is one of the most encouraging times to be thinking about recurring giving. And there is an opportunity that's before us, and particularly before mid-size and small nonprofits, that has, I would argue, never before existed. With a combination of technology, consumer trends, and donor trends, those three things are coming together to make sustainer programs not only more important than they've ever been before, but more accessible to more ministries. You know, I even debated, I talked to our designers who picked the photo for this slide, and I said, this looks a lot like a child sponsorship photo, guys. And the good news is, if you don't have child sponsorship in today's world, you still have a tremendous opportunity to be successful and grow your ministry with recurring giving. So before we do that, though, just a quick introduction. Thanks for the introduction, Kristen. But so Alan heads up our innovation team, and basically what we think about in the nonprofit world is how to help nonprofits thrive. We'll talk about that in just a minute. And Alan's core day job is strategic innovation, which at the end of the day is about how can we partner with nonprofits to help them thrive. Sustainer programs in the subscription economy is one of those sorts of things that has become really important today. And so that's what we're talking about today. Just some of the ministries that Masterworks is blessed to partner with. This is not all the ministries, but just to kind of give you an example of the kinds of organizations that we're able to partner with. That goes from international relief and development organizations like Compassion. That includes local rescue ministries, Union Rescue Mission, Knox Area Rescue Ministries. It includes evangelism organizations focused on ministering to families. At the end of the day, if the ministry is doing something that we believe delights the heart of God, then we're like, hey, can we help? And so that's what we're passionate about, and many different scales of ministries. And at the end of the day, if we can help inspire things that delight the heart of God, then we are about that. But here's where I want to start. So 84,700, that is the number of Christian nonprofits in the United States today. By the way, for those of you that pay attention to the stats, that does not include churches. That would add a couple 100,000. But if you think of the parachurch Christian nonprofits in the world today, there are 84,700 nonprofits. But the reality is the vast majority of those organizations are not thriving and growing. There is a very, very small number of organizations, nonprofit Christian organizations, that are thriving and growing. And then there is a massive middle group that could be thriving, but they're either flat or they're declining. And that makes me sad, but it also fires me up. And that informs the work that we're doing. If you think about the classic organizational curve that every organization, every church, every business goes through. And, it's the classic S curve. Many ministries today, new and old, are somewhere at the top or even on the other side of the S curve of the programs of the overall ministry arc. And we believe fundamentally that part of what we're seeing in organizations that are growing is this idea of creating new S curves, creating new things, new innovations, new things in the market that will help those organizations thrive and grow. And so there's a question mark for me. If you look at these 84,700 ministries and this lack of growth, where are those ministries that are growing, and what can we learn from those? So, and by the way, I'm going to pause because I see there's some chats coming in. Are there any questions at this point, Kristen?
No, I don't think so yet.
Okay. So fundamental question, if ministries are not growing, what can we learn by studying those, that smaller percentage of ministries that are growing? And the way we like to think about this is, where are the bright spots in the world of nonprofit ministries? I love to read books. I'm a huge fan. And there was a book that came out a number of years ago by a gentleman by the name of Dan and Chip Heath. And that book is called Switch. And in Switch, they're talking about how to create change when change is hard. They're talking about transformation in organizations and cultures. And one of the lessons they share in that book is, amidst a sea of data, in this case, 84,700 nonprofits that are not growing, one very important lesson is to go and find out where the growth is and learn from that. Find out what works and do more of that, as a colleague of mine likes to say. And so the question for us is, where are the bright spots in the nonprofit space? And as you can imagine, one of those bright spots is this idea of building and growing sustainer programs. So I want to talk about, basically today, Alan and I are going to talk about two things, essentially. First, I'm going to cover some forces that are driving these changes and innovations in recurring giving. And then second, Alan is going to share what we've seen among this new breed of recurring giving programs. And hopefully between those two things, this is my hopeful outcome, is that you are both encouraged and excited about investing and growing your own sustainer program. And that may very well involve needing to design or redesign what you have. From my experience, every nonprofit has some sort of recurring program, but for the most part, they are not this kind of new breed of recurring program. So I'm hoping you leave today fired up to invest and to focus more of your attention on recurring giving, and also to have some key insights from Alan as to what are the kinds of things that you need to be thinking about when you think about your recurring giving program. So, fundamentally, historically, if you look at sustainer giving, you will see that there are basically three different kinds of sustainer programs. The first kind of sustainer program that has been very successful for decades now is what I call one-to-one. So that is your child sponsorship programs, that is your missionary sponsorship programs, your staff support programs. Basically, I, as a donor, am giving to this human being. I've got a face and a relationship of some form, and that has been by far the most powerful kind of recurring program. There's a human element to it. There's a connection. There's a retention is really high, because you don't want to be the one to not have that child be provided with food and education, or that missionary friend of yours. It's really a sticky program. But unfortunately, many ministries are not built the way their program works, either because of privacy or because of scale, or for whatever reason. One-to-one sponsorship, for lack of a better term, is not really an option. The second type of recurring giving program historically is what I would call membership. So if I give at this level on a recurring basis, then I get some sort of benefit. So your classic museum, donation, or PBS, kind of donation. NPR, those sorts of things. And again, that works if your program is built around benefits and sort of things the donor receives in return. And the distant third kind of sustainer program, which I would argue is about 90+% of nonprofits, is a glorified monthly check EFT credit card program with a name on it, friends of the ministry, right? And we all know, and I'm not mocking that because that's just been the reality, that, hey, if you're going to give monthly, we don't really have a lot to give you in return, but if you care about our cause and our ministry so much, please, we would love for you to give monthly. And we do recruitment and all those sorts of things. Well, these trends that we're going to talk about today make that third category just as powerful as the first two. And so what I want you to hear is if you have a one-to-one sponsorship or a membership program, I think you're going to learn some things here because they're being transformed as well. But if you're one of the vast majority of ministries that can't do one of those first two, you can create and design or redesign your sustainer program to be something that will resonate and will be a core part of your growth in the future. So let me walk through these two trends, and then I'll hand it off to Alan. So the first thing I want to do is talk about what's happening in the consumer market, because that is leading what is happening in the donor market as well. So let's talk about the consumer market. Overall, customer loyalty in the retail sector on the consumer side is in decline. So this is the chart, and you can Google for this kind of information and find 1,000 charts that basically say the same thing. Getting people to repeat purchase products is on the decline. Customer loyalty is at an all-time low. So this particular chart shows across the retail sector the number of purchases, subsequent purchases that consumers made by year over the course of 4 years. And the main point here is that down and to the right, people are not repeat purchasing in the consumer market. The equivalent of what we might call single gift in a fundraising world, this is sort of single purchase. I went and bought the widget. Did I come back and buy another widget, or did I come back to that store? At the same time, in the consumer market, recurring payments have become very commonplace. And this is huge. Of the 24% of all payments that are automatic, 48% of those payments today are what are known as discretionary payments. So think about your own consumer life. 10 years ago, I would venture to guess that most of us, I know my life for sure, the vendors that had access to my checking account or my credit card account to pull automatically every month were my mortgage payment, the power bill, the phone bill, right? They were what are called non-discretionary payments. Today, half of all recurring payments in the US are what are called discretionary payments. So that's your Netflix subscription, that's your Hulu, that's your Amazon Prime subscription. And so this has been a very important change in consumer behavior, that people are much more comfortable with automatic monthly payments to vendors. Now, this is a kind of a fun little quiz. I want you to, I would say raise your hands, but we're the only ones on camera. So I'll raise my hand, and Alan and Kristen can raise their hands. But I want you to think about if you would raise your hand, metaphorically or in reality, if you have a subscription in the video entertainment space. So that's your Netflix, your Hulu. I don't know about you guys, but I've already paid for 3 years of Disney Plus, the new service that launches in a couple weeks. I have 2 little ones. I have a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old daughter at home. And for, they've already gotten, $180 out of me to pay for 3 years of their video entertainment subscription.
Probably a good investment, Dave. That's probably wise.
Yeah, I hope so. It's like, how do they take billions of dollars of content and then hand it out to customers for $6.99? There's a lot to that. Yep. All right. So raise your hand if you're if you pay monthly for any sort of music streaming. That's your Spotify's, your Pandora's. If you would have asked me 5 years ago, even 3 years ago, hey, Dave, should you, in 3 years, you're going to be renting music rather than owning music, I would have said, no way. Why would I ever rent music. I want to own my music, right? But that's not the world we live in today. People have made that choice to invest in music streaming software. This one kills me. I have to raise my hand, right? Because again, if you would have said a couple of years ago, hey, Dave, you're going to be paying Microsoft monthly for the ability to use Microsoft Office, or you're going to pay Adobe monthly for the ability to use Photoshop, I would have said, no way. I want to make the decision, when I'm ready to upgrade, and I want to own that product, and have it on my computer. Subscription boxes. This is a fun one. We have some subscription boxes. You got your Stitch Fix, those sorts of things. Books. Anyone subscribe to books? And by the way, Audible counts, because that usually gets about half of the hands in the room. We subscribe to books today. Meal delivery. We actually, in my house, about once a month, we do actually have a big box that comes with meals, and that's a subscription. Groceries. Kristen, you just talked about that. Unfortunately, Poulsbo HQ is in a very small town outside of Seattle, so we do not have 2-hour grocery delivery, but Safeway in our town will deliver groceries to your house if you would like. And how about this one? This one, I've in all the times this year that I've given this presentation, I've had one person raise their hand about vehicle ownership. And I don't mean lease, by the way. We'll come back to that. Anyone subscribe to their doorbell?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll see. Some of you are, yelling into your computer. Yes, I subscribe to my doorbell, but let me explain. So on the vehicle ownership, actually multiple manufacturers, vehicle companies today, automakers are launching subscription models. And so the idea is you buy in at a certain level, and then you have the ability, you now subscribe to Jeep, and you have the ability to go and pick up any model you want based on your subscription level, swap those out, right? So you can subscribe to your car today. This is the doorbell one. I don't know if anybody here, I'm sure at least a few hands would go up, have video doorbells. This is one of the more popular video doorbell, the Ring doorbell. Well, you can purchase the Ring doorbell and be able to log in anytime via your phone and see what's happening on the porch or whatever. But for a mere $10 a month, you get all these features of actual recordings and motion alerts and all those sorts of things. And again, talk to the 10 years ago version of Dave. If you would have said, hey, in 10 years, you're going to pay the doorbell company $10 a month, I would have said, I don't know what you're talking about, but I don't want to be a part of that world. I don't understand, right? It's just the world we live in. We live in what we call the subscription economy. We're not the ones that coined that term, but it's this idea that recurring subscriptions have impacted every area of consumer life and business. And what people are ultimately buying into, sometimes begrudgingly, but they are ultimately buying into this idea of always on, anywhere, memorable experiences with ongoing value. So the reason I'm okay with subscribing to music rather than owning music is because I can access it on any of my devices anywhere. I have basically access to the entire world of music. And so the fact that I don't own music is a worthy trade-off because of what I'm getting with this subscription. That's the Disney Plus model. Disney has bet that for $6.99 direct to consumer, that they're going to have enough margin and enough ongoing recurring revenue that it is totally worth my family not buying a $30 DVD at Walmart, after the movie comes out. And so that is the world that we live in on the consumer side. Let's pivot to the donor side and talk about how we're seeing this fit into the donor world. So in the donor world, single gift programs, which are your bread and butter sort of base of your pyramid programs. And by the way, I would argue also middle and major donor programs are single gift programs because you're working at getting that next gift. They're operating in an increasingly challenging environment for a couple reasons. Number one, retention rates are low and benchmarks are declining. So that chart I showed about 10 slides ago with consumer loyalty, we're seeing some of the same things happening in donor loyalty. The cost to acquire a single gift donor is growing. And so you take those two things and those two things kind of operate in conjunction. And the long-term value for single gift programs is relatively low, right? Because if the cost to acquire is increasing, the retention is decreasing, then the long-term value is therefore decreasing.
So Dave, can I ask a question about that last slide?
Sure.
Are you finding that consistent across, just kind of across the space in general, or is that specifically kind of generational behavior? Is there a generational dynamic in that data?
I think there is a cultural and generational dynamic, a cultural, economic, and generational dynamic. So the generational dynamic has been talked about quite a bit over the last decade or so, and that is that you go from sort of the great generation who would give to 20 nonprofits and gave out of a sense of responsibility to really the boomer generation, which is the core donor file today, which is much more selective. They actually want to it's not just a sense of responsibility. They actually want to have a sense of engagement and sort of cause affiliation, right? And so you get a narrower set of nonprofits that get more of the funds. But then at the same time, obviously, we'll continue to talk about the consumer trends that are changing the way people think about loyalty. Loyalty isn't what it used to be, would be sort of the old guy way of saying it, right? But at the same time, and then that last piece is culture. I think culturally, organizations are changing. That's a great question.
Yeah. Okay, good.
So at the same time as these sort of single gift, let me go and get another single gift from my major donor, my middle donor, or my general donor are becoming harder and more expensive. Donors at the same time are becoming much more likely to be sustainers than ever before. Couple stats for you. Let's start with the millennials. We just talked about the boomers, but 52% of millennials are actually more likely to give a monthly donation over a large one-time donation. I don't like to play the generational card. Alan knows, wink, wink, but I am a millennial by most standards, and that is very true. It's like I'd just rather do a monthly recurring gift because if I really care about a cause, why wouldn't I support that cause monthly? Why would I wait until December to support that cause? But to not leave Alan, our resident Gen Xer, out, that same stat, because a lot of people understand that most of the fundraising files today are baby boomers and Gen Xers, not millennials. And so 49% of baby boomers and Gen Xers are already enrolled in a monthly giving program. Mm-hmm. And the best way I can illustrate this is if you believe in generosity, if you give, think about your own behavior. 5 years ago, the only two nonprofits my wife and I gave to on a monthly recurring basis was World Vision and Compassion. And World Vision because of the sponsored child we sponsored with our oldest daughter, and Compassion because of the sponsored child we sponsored with our youngest daughter. Very common theme. Today, every single nonprofit that is important to my wife and I and our family gets a monthly gift. Because why wouldn't we do that? Our church, has a monthly recurring gift, and every nonprofit that is in the top tier of what's really important to us has a monthly gift. And again, this is not a general donor trend, by the way. These are people that are giving $1,000 a month, $2,500 a month. And so I don't want people to hear when I talk about recurring giving $37 a month or $22 a month. Yes, that still exists, but people are giving whatever they can at whatever level is sacrificial for them on a monthly basis. And that's just a reality of donor programs today. When you look at online fundraising growth, every year for the past 15 years, online fundraising has grown double digits, except for this year, by the way. This was a historic year in that online fundraising only grew 1.2%. But when you look underneath those numbers at online fundraising growth, most of that online fundraising growth is actually happening in sustainer programs. And so the underlying trait, not the only reason online fundraising is growing rapidly, but the major primary contributing factor on online fundraising growth is sustainer giving. And so at the end of the day, donors are basically more likely to become sustainers, or in our nomenclature, to subscribe to services or causes they prefer. Now I want to, and I'm going to hand it off to Alan shortly, because this is changing the nature of sustainer programs and what makes a good sustainer program and why somebody would sign up for a sustainer program and why they would stick. Because what Disney Plus is doing in the streaming service space is not the same thing as delivering DVDs, 3 months after launch. They understand that the value that they have to provide to in that case, the subscriber, it has to be totally different than the value they would have provided in the old traditional model. And I believe in what we're seeing in the organizations, these bright spots that we've studied and that we've worked with and designed these programs, there is a new kind of sustainer program. So before I do that, just a couple other things, stating the obvious here, but the long-term value of a sustainer is much increased, by the way. So this is an example of single gift donors who convert to become sustainers and what happens to their long-term value. So if anything, this is a very conservative graph. In fact, sometime Alan, I think we've seen more on the average of 4x in terms of the long-term value of a sustainer versus a single gift donor. And so let me tell a story just before I hand it off to Alan, because this became very personal in my family about a month ago. So I mentioned we have 2 daughters, a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old, and we've sponsored a child in their names since each of them were born. And so about a month ago, my wife and I get a large 9x12 package in the mail from World Vision, and it says, "Let's celebrate" across the top. Now, for those of you in fundraising, and I'm in fundraising, I know what that means. So I thought, oh no. So I opened the package, and guess what? Telma from Guatemala, who shares my daughter Paige's birthday, her community is graduating from the program at World Vision. And so she's no longer going to be in sponsorship. And so what we want to do is celebrate Telma's, community graduating, and then here's your next sponsor child, basically. So I know the strategy. The point is, how do you keep me on as a sustainer? But this was a very, personal reality for our family. And so I talked to my wife about it, and we sat down on a weekend about 2 weeks ago, and with Paige, with our oldest daughter, and we said, Paige, we've got good news. Telma, who we've sponsored for the last 9 years, is graduating from her program, and it's very exciting for her community. But we give to World Vision and to Telma on your behalf. And so we want you to be a part of this giving decision. And so would you like to continue to sponsor, and unfortunately I don't remember the name of the new little girl that we had gotten the folder for, but, sponsor this child, or would you like to give in another way, or to another ministry? And it came home to me when my 9-year-old said, Dad, what I want to do is I want to give monthly to the Summer in the USA program. Now, you all don't know what Summer in the USA. Summer in the USA program, it's not a World Vision program. It's a nonprofit that's here locally that is an outreach to the people of the Basque region of Spain, specifically to students. This is a very unchurched people group. And what they do is they come to the U.S. and they spend a month with an American family. They learn about our culture, but they also learn about Jesus, and they learn about the church. And it's a really powerful program. Well, we had a student in our home this summer from Spain, and so she became a big sister to my little girls, and it was a profound experience. But here's the interesting thing from a sustainer program perspective. My 9-year-old chose not to have the monthly pen pal or the name, the idea of a child sponsorship relationship. She chose to give to a nonprofit that's honestly not going to provide her much of a benefit. She's not sponsoring my Ellen, the student who is in our home. She's just given monthly to this nonprofit. But the reason she did that was because of a powerful, profound, memorable experience. She feels like she's part of a community, and she made that decision. And so for me, this became very personal over the last month when my own daughter decided to stop child sponsorship and to give monthly to a very small nonprofit. By the way, this is a nonprofit that I was meeting with yesterday. Their annual fundraising budget is $300,000. And so Paige's decision to give, $35 a month is a huge thing for them. And they can see, even this nonprofit can see why the sustainer program needs to be such a core part of where they are and their fundraising, because it's I have a friend in the industry who calls it sustainable programs C2R2, which I thought, what does that mean? C2R2? She says it's cash consistent, recession resistant. And I thought, oh, that is so sticky. I don't even like it, but it's so memorable. I'm going to have to use it, And so thank you, Tina. But cash consistent, recession resistant. And so let me pause for a moment. Alan is going to share a number of the keys that we're seeing in growth, but I think this would be a good place to pause if there are any questions or.
Yeah. So Dave, here's a question for you. I think this is kind of interesting in your example of jumping really from a one-to-one sponsorship that you were in previously with your daughter, and now is this new organization that you're committing to. They really fall under that just monthly donor program, right? Like they have not figured this out necessarily. They haven't perfected this. They are still sort of probably in the same boat as many of our listeners. And okay, I hear that we need to ramp up. I think we need to make this a more robust program. There's value here, but it doesn't exist yet. So the on-ramp has happened really before the great program is built. So this is really now a great time for them to embrace that and build it up somewhere. Am I tracking correctly?
Yep, absolutely. And the thing that they know that they have, but they didn't realize was such an asset, I would say in business terms, is the whole nature of the program is profound, memorable experiences. Is a student coming from across the world to live with your family for a month, to go on vacation with you, to become a part of the family. And there are profound, memorable experiences that happen. My girls will never be the same. I think of, myself as having 3 daughters now, right? So we've had a profound moment in our family. And so my advice to the organization is take advantage of that. Like those people are raving fans essentially. And so how can you then build a program based on those memorable experiences? And then, okay, what are the tactics, that will help people make that decision? Because, what do you do with the fact that, I hosted a student in my house for a month. Why would I give? It's like, all right, well, you clearly are passionate about this cause. You're passionate about this people group. You're passionate about this human being. And then how do we connect the dots and create a community around that?
Yeah, it's really good. I think that there's probably a lot of organizations listening or that will listen to this in the future that have something already that they're doing that does provide some type of great donor experience or interaction with clients. That is when the emotions are high. People are excited about the impact that the organization is having. There is that profound, memorable experience, whether it's a mission trip or an event by which they were able to hear the testimony of a client whose life was changed. And this is a great opportunity then to begin to engage those folks. So
yeah, absolutely. In fact, it's a perfect segue, Alan, to your content, because these are the kinds of things that we're looking for in this new breed of programs that are growing rapidly. And by the way, I would argue that these programs are going to have higher retention rates than your traditional gold standard child sponsorship programs. Because unfortunately, I did just say that World Vision lost a sponsor because the child transitions. Well, our gift to this Summer in the USA ministry will have no reason to ever lapse because there's not going to be a changeover in that program. And so if they can continue to provide a great experience and just remind us of that moment in time, they're going to have a donor for life.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Okay, Alan, take it away.
Yeah, well, let's hit the next slide. Thanks again for everyone having us on. We are going to have 6 common themes here that we're going to talk about, and I'm going to hit each one in about 2 minutes each so that we have time left at the end for any remaining questions and so you can get comfortably to your next thing. So these are when we look at when we've done an assessment analysis of the best programs out there, which has then become kind of our 6 convictions for how to build sustainer programs. Well, we see these 6 themes. And we have these 6 convictions. First is defined community, and we'll get into all the details about each one of these 6 in a second. Number 2, unique value proposition. Number 3, bold creative. 4, designed experience. So Dave was talking about experience, and we'll talk a little bit more about that and what we mean in terms of how we build that in. 5th, digital first platform. And then lastly, a sustainer primary approach to all of their mass donor fundraising. So let's take those one at a time. Define community. What we mean by that is we are giving people, we're inviting people into something that has a sense of community about it. Now, what that doesn't necessarily mean is that we're doing a lot of heavy lifting and creating infrastructure and, monitoring heavily these different things to create some sort of, community. That's just very tough for an organization to sustain. So what we're really talking about very often is like providing a sense of community, a sense of identification with a larger group of people. So this is Restoration Partners for Prison Fellowship. This is one that we helped them build, and we just launched it 3 weeks ago. It is if you look through the entire thing, it is a gorgeous piece of work. The entire experience is really excellently done, very compelling. And right here in the copy on the landing page, it defines who the Restoration Partners are. Restoration Partners give every month to resurrect hearts among America's incarcerated and their families. And then skipping down, together we can work to restore them to God, their families, and their communities. Next one, we start to get a little bit more, again, right on the landing page. Restoration Partners serve hope daily. We're not talking about we, the organization. We're talking about you, the person that we're hoping will join this community. Restoration Partners serve hope daily. The demand for prison fellowships innovative programs is so high that more states want us than we can fund. So it's calling people into this effort to take them into more states. Another one, again, Restoration Partners, further down, we hit this theme over and over again about the sense of community. And this is all just through creative. There's no infrastructure here necessarily. You're joining a nation of reunited families and resurrected lives. Be a Restoration Partner. Now, that's for Prison Fellowship, right out of the gate with something that we're just launching. We don't want to invest a lot in, in community if we don't know that it's going to resonate. One of the things that they already have that we're essentially going to be repurposing for Restoration Partners very soon is this next piece here, which is prayer team. So this is where you start to get into something that really is a lot more like community. Now, it's all essentially automated except for a weekly, a new weekly story or prayer request that goes up, but that's pretty minimal. And so this prayer team, people sign up. They sign up to pray on a certain day of the week at a certain time. The night before, they get an email with that week's prayer request. And then they can see where they all are all across the country, not like down to the street level, but at a certain level that's appropriate, that gives this very strong sense of community. In fact, if you were on this page and you were to scroll down, you'd see that some people who when they pray for that request actually leave their prayer on the page. So we will be retooling this in the coming weeks for Restoration Partners, so that when the invitation goes out to them as one of the benefits, really more one of the experiences for them to join this, they come into this prayer team that is really set up now for them. So that's defined community. Now, unique value proposition. Now, some organizations that have really tight value propositions, like they've just done really great brand work. They really haven't had any kind of mission creep. They've kept to one thing. Very often they already have a very unique value proposition that is really compelling and very simple and easy to state. And then really in your sustainer program, you're just bringing that to light in a powerful way and in a way that allows people to participate more completely in it. But a lot of organizations have had to expand to meet needs, and we're going to stay with Prison Fellowship here. Go ahead and hit the next slide. So with Prison Fellowship, over the years, over their 30-some year history, they've had to do a lot of different things. So it's about restoring partners. They do these hope events, which are yard events. They've developed the Prison Fellowship Academy, which is the last 18 months of before someone reenters society. They go through this. They go through this special program, which has very high success rates. There's all sorts of in-prison Bible studies and other things. But they've also been called to work on the families of prisoners. So they work very hard through their Angel Tree Christmas, Angel Tree Camping, Angel Tree Sports Clinics to keep these children connected to their parents who are incarcerated, so that when they come out, they have, that family unit is together and all of that. So they've got a lot going on, and their single gift program, as you'd expect, they raise money on camping, they raise money on sports clinics, they raise money on academy. All these things are their single gifts. But here is one point of contact. We want to bring it down into one thing. Being a restoration partner is the best way to bring hope to prison. And here's our proof. Here's all the things that we do. But we're really trying to hone that unique value proposition of what it is to not just give to one of these things one-off, but on an ongoing basis, be a restoration partner. Another way that we stated it in the same experience: your monthly gift will help prisoners find their way out of darkness and into the light of God's word. Your gift will provide year-round ministry for children with an incarcerated parent, reminding them that they are loved during the separation. Taking all this complexity for an organization that's been around for quite a number of decades and done a lot of things, and boiling it down into one participatory, compelling, unique value proposition. And then lastly, right before they sign up, we bring it home with restoration partners give monthly to bring new life to incarcerated men and women through life-changing in-prison programs across the country. So again, at every turn, we want to come at this with a very unique value proposition. Next trend and next conviction for us is bold creative. So, you can do a lot, to be clear. You can do a lot with Make It Monthly. So there's really no creative that goes into, on your donation page, a checkbox to make it monthly. And by all means, if you're not doing that, you absolutely should do that. And you'll be surprised right away how many people you get who will make it monthly. And that's very much akin to the male sustainer programs, the male recurring giving programs that you had like 10, 15 years ago, where, back to the generational thing, we're appealing to the elder generation and, the greatest generation, and appealing to their sense of duty, and really just, hey, you love our organization. It'd be great if you could help us out by making that a monthly gift. That worked great back then. And we had, I was a VP of direct marketing and then all of marketing for a mid-sized nonprofit during that era, mid-sized ministry. And there was this 10% rule, and maybe a number of you have heard this 10% rule that someone really smart, I'm sure, just sort of made up, and it stuck with all of us, which was, if 10% of your mass donor revenue is coming from your sustainer program, then that's great. That's the gold standard. So a lot of us, me included, we sort of stopped there. All right, we've got 10% of our revenue. Okay, great. But the real focus was single gift giving. And when we get to the sixth trend and the sixth conviction, I think we'll challenge that a little bit. So in terms of bold creative, the sustainer programs today are beautiful, well-designed work. Dave talked about small organizations. The Dakota Boys and Girls Ranch is a very small organization, and they do their own website. They do most of their own marketing and communications. But when we brought this to them, when we worked with them on a sustainer program, and we came up with Honeycomb Partners, which relates back to the story of how they were founded. When we worked on this, we thought, okay, you guys do a fine job with your with your creative work, but this just to as part of making this compelling and inviting and giving this credibility, we thought, let's design just some really beautiful, and to be true to the intent, the vibe that we want for this sustainer experience, fun, right? We want this fun when you actually go to the land, or you see the bee actually, on the GIF bounces, and so it's it's really well done creative work. The next slide is simply an example of the banner that they use on their they've plopped it in the middle of their website, And it takes you to, it's a very simple, this one's a very simple onboarding experience. And this is an organization, by the way, which is small and typically struggles with digital performance. They're primarily male, male driven in terms of mass donors. Surprisingly, getting some good response on digital. Designed experience. Dave talked a little bit about the importance of experience, and what we see and what we believe in is not just putting good creative work together, but really being intentional about what is that journey that we are inviting someone to come into, and how does that, and what's that like as they go through, and how does that invite them in, exceed all expectations so that they talk to other people and you get this word of mouth effect, and keep them in for a long period of time. So Charity Water. Charity Water, I don't know if you all feel like this, but kind of like Charity Water, I find a lot of nonprofits sort of love to hate, like, oh, they're so good at what they do. Makes me mad. I mean, I'm impressed, but I'm also kind of bummed that ours isn't as good. They're just good. I mean, they're very good at design work. And I would say that in terms of their experience, they've done a very good job with experience. When they first started, the Spring is the name of their sustainer program. There's a longer history back that goes back 5 years before the Spring with something else called Pipeline, which we can get into perhaps later. But when they launched the Spring, one of the things that they launched was this journey, which these videos, it was a series of videos, and you can hit the next slide, which, that had like these episodes by seasons. Really well done. They're 5-minute, they're fun, they're so on brand, and it's all in a fun and unexpected way, really affirming what you, the member of the Spring, have done with your monthly giving. And it's really great. And I have to say they do a great job with making some of these actually a little bit funny, even irreverently funny, which is amazing that they can pull this off. But so now, some of you may know, at this point, they've actually moved the Spring into just part of the normal experience. Sorry, this video series, The Journey, into part of their normal experience. So you don't have to be a member of the Spring anymore. But it is this idea of unique content, or getting early views on the content, like we are with Prison Fellowship's Restoration Partners, where we're not going to create a unique content for them, but they are going to get the videos first before other people. So what are ways that you can use video to create, a fantastic experience? Another thing that they do is, and this is what many more of you can do, most organizations can have an ongoing series of like monthly emails that report back on what you're doing. Interesting in that upper right, when you see, and this is all about report back, by the way, we all kind of flagellate ourselves. Oh, we're terrible at report back. Well, if you promise that you're going to do it, then you'll find that you actually do deliver on that and provide that ongoing report back. When you click on View Your Profile, if we can move to the next slide, well, actually, no. So I guess I've got these slides. I didn't make it into the final version. My apologies. So just go back real quick. When you click on View Your Profile, it takes you to a portal that they have, which they've done all the organizations that we've seen and work with. They all have a portal of some type where you can go in and make adjustments to your giving. You can see how much you've given. Charity Water does an especially good job of gamifying it. I think that we sometimes overstate the real potential for gamification in our in the work that we do, but there's places for it. And with the Spring, they've done a great job of, like, you hit these different thresholds, and they give you badges and that sort of thing, on top of the really great functionality that they have built into that. Now, when you leave the Spring, here's what comes next. It's super smart. Even on the way out, even as you're saying goodbye to the Spring, they do a great job of making it a good experience. Mm-hmm. You've been in the Spring for 10 months so far, changing the lives of 5 people and hitting a couple of milestones, like 5 people served and committed member along the way. Like, they're reminding you of what you've done. And they actually make it really easy by saying you can just take a break. So, and that is really important to be back to intentionally designed experiences. Design the goodbye experience to be great, so that you can either prevent them from leaving, or so that you can win them back.
Well, and just to point out how this is a part of the subscription economy, I recently canceled a monthly gift that I mentioned about 20 minutes ago, and nowhere on the website could you cancel or pause or do anything with your monthly gift. You had to call during the business hours of 9 to 5, so on and so forth. And I know why they're doing that, because they want to create some friction, but that was not a good customer experience. Today, people are used to, I want to pause Netflix for 3 months because I'm not using it, or because my income's a little tight. And so these sorts of using the subscription economy things like this is just very, very smart. It's a good experience, and it's sort of fits what people are expecting today.
All right, and I'm going to try to drive to completion in the last minute here. So digital first is really obvious. Go to the next slide. So this is Charity Water. They've done a great landing page, and when they launched it, and it still continues to today, 3 years later, but the spring was everywhere on all their digital platforms. And they just do it. They do a great job. If you go to their page, you will likely see at the top of their regular charitywater.org a banner for the spring, and you go to the spring, that'll take you to this page, and you'll see they've just done a lot to, in terms of making this a primarily digital experience, because they've made a ton of changes over these last 3 years. The great thing about us, the reason that we launch these things digitally, is so that we can figure out the changes we need to make up front, like as we go, and can do it much more easily than you could in a non-digital world. Next thing is, yes, a sustainer primary approach. And what we mean by that is, forget the 10% rule, okay? That was yesterday, that was 10 years ago, that was pre-subscriber economy. Today, we lean into the idea that the purpose of your non-major donor program, your mass donor program, the primary purpose is to drive sustainers. And that as such, that even your homepage should be trying to drive people to become sustainers. Yeah. And that doesn't mean you have to acquire them as sustainers. That's actually very hard to do. Some organizations pull it off, but an organization, and you can hit the next slide, an organization that's been happy to bring on people as single gift donors and then turn them into sustainers has been IJM, International Justice Mission. About 4 or 5 years ago, they had been flat at 4,500 sustainers for Freedom Partners. But then they had someone came in who changed course and said, we're going to make this the centerpiece of what we do. And so at every turn, they're happy to bring you on a single gift, but they're constantly trying to, with real discipline and in a savvy way, try to compel you to become a sustainer. If you click through on Send Rescue in this example, which is the top of their homepage, or if you were to click Give Now, both of those have options for joining Freedom Partners. Then if you go down, hit the next slide, right below this, Freedom Partner, rescue slaves every day. Freedom is the most valuable gift of all, and $24 means you can send a rescue every day. And they're promoting their monthly giving. And then on every page, hit the next slide, they've got down at the bottom this really smart yellow piece that you become familiar with as you go through their site, which is a pitch for Freedom Partners on every page. And by doing that, they've moved from less than 5,000 sustainers to well over 20,000 at this point, and it's become one of their main engines of growth during that time period. So we've hit these 6 themes: defined community, unique value proposition, bold creative, designed experience, digital first platform, and a sustainer primary approach. That's what we see in the marketplace. Here, this is the way we build them, is we come alongside you. There's 4 phases, but the most important thing about this is twofold. One, it's a lean process. We are not going to spend any more money or time than we need to. And 2, as part of making it successful in a lean environment, we are facilitating a process that is like, it's us. it's the client organization, and it's the audience. The audience themselves is involved at every single phase. So by the time you put it in the marketplace, it's encountered them already 4 times and has a much greater chance of success. And such that what we see is you get 55 sustainers and you've already broken even on all the expenses. You get 222 sustainers and now you've got a 4-to-1, long-term ROI on your investment in this project. And that's because we use this process, which facilitates that.
Wow. Alan, do you feel like you were talking on double speed?
Yeah, it's like, who was that guy? Something, John Wichita Jr., I think, who did the Federal Express ads back in the 80s. I think that was me. So.
Hey, you did awesome.
Thanks.
And right at the bell. So nice job. Hey guys, I really appreciate you taking the time. I think this, as you're listing out, Alan in particular, these key convictions, these 6 things, they are not so different than things we've talked about in other emphasis areas or other donor groups, right? This is helping the donor feel like the hero and the person, taking the organization out of it, creating this community of givers. These are things that we do at other levels of giving. And I think sometimes, at least in my own previous experiences, we don't put as much thought and effort into the sustainer group, and we really need to. And the payout, to your point at the end, can be significant for the organization's long-term sustainability. So I think that's just excellent, and a great way to kind of culminate, frankly, our webinar series for the year, taking all of those little pieces and applying them to that sustainer group. So thanks, guys, so much for your time and your expertise. It was really insightful. Lots of information for me to continue to just kind of mull over and glean from. So I appreciate it.
Yep. And we're always happy to answer any follow-up questions. This is such a deep area that's had a lot of transformation in the last couple of years. And so happy to answer any follow-ups. So
yeah, awesome. I love it. All right. Well, those ministry leaders who have tuned in, thank you for your time. I trust that you have learned a lot from today's experience. This webinar will be available for you to review later. We will send out a link to it following the close of today, and you'll receive that tomorrow. So be encouraged, review this material. There was a lot there, but I do think it's encouraging to know that these are things we've talked about before and in a lot of cases. And so this is information that you can now really focus and put around that sustainer population, and not only acquire some new folks, but then once you've got them, how do you get them into a sustainer program? Now, don't forget those mid-level donors and major donors that we've talked about before. Certainly engage the signatory as you engage them. We are always here to partner with you, particularly as we are in fourth quarter and those year-end donor efforts. We want to help you help your donors be as generous as possible. If your donor owns a business or real estate, we can go with you on a call to educate them about how they may be able to be more generous. We want to equip you in your development efforts and partner with you in those major donor conversations. So this is it for our 2019 webinars. Continue to engage with us, continue to engage with me on LinkedIn, and then also on our Facebook page. We will continue to share resources and tools to help equip you. Stay tuned to your email for future events and resources, and God bless you in your year-end development efforts. Thanks so much.